Hi everyone. So some of my subscribers have been asking me to do a follow-up video on the last video I prepared on EQ and social intelligence and what they can do to improve it. So especially as futurists argue that this is one of the most important skills in the job market right now. So what I'd like you to do is watch that other video if you haven't already, but if you've already watched that video on EQ and social intelligence, let's talk about a few of the discussion items that people have been talking about of how to improve it. So let's start from some of the established practices from easy to hard. So one of the things that we can all do to improve our awareness is to start tracking your emotional state during the day by categorizing them and then asking yourself, how did my emotional state at each moment affect someone else? Let me give you an example of that. So an example of this is what I'm showing you on this whiteboard here is a simple technique that's been used before. It's basically by using post-it notes, writing down emotional states, and then just marking throughout the week how you feel throughout the day. And with that, in these pink post-it notes, you can see by tracking this what your emotional state is throughout the day. And this is just some examples to give you an illustration of this. And then you can start feeling, okay, wow, I'm generally a happy person, or I'm very curious, or maybe what you're seeing is some negative emotions that are showing up without the workday. And so with that, asking yourself, how am I reacting to people based on those emotional states? And how are people reacting to me based on the emotional state that I'm demonstrating as well? So these are some examples of that at play. What I have down here is also an example of another EQ model, which is people are tracking their stress levels throughout the day. And so what they'll track is, on a scale of 1 to 5, what their stress level, which really impacts their emotional state and how people are reacting to them. So this is also another great example of how you might apply EQ. So some of the examples that we can talk about around building EQ is going for a walk on a different route each day. The simple act of changing your behavior every single day will create some empathy so that it allows you to expose you to different experiences in your life. Striking up a classic conversation with a stranger to get to know their perspectives and their life story. Asking people how they feel after you've said something. Tell people that you're working on your empathy. That goes a long way, because if you just let people know that you're working on your empathy and you're asking for help, they're always willing to reach out and give you advice when they think that you could improve in certain areas. Of course, there's time-tested approaches to traveling, for example, which really improves your empathy by visiting different countries and different experiences. But you can also do that locally by trying out different restaurants, going to different locations, visiting different community groups, meeting people that are different from you. And one of the other approaches that is more complicated is really start to listen to what a person means. What I mean by that is actively listening to what they mean to say versus working on preparing our response. And a lot of times when it comes to communication skills, we're so focused on getting ready for our response in the workplace that we're really not carefully listening to what the other person really intends to say. And so if we take the time to actually listen carefully versus preparing our response mentally, we can actually improve our empathy in a very big way because of that. And we call that in negotiations and conflict management, suspending your reaction, taking the time to absorb what they have to say before actually reacting emotionally to that. And then, because so much of our body language communicates so much, is working on our own body language and watching and monitoring what our body language is saying to the other person. And because 80% of our communication is through body language, that goes a long way also improving our EQ as well, because we start to observe what our body is saying to other people when we're talking to them. And that's some of the simple things that we can all work on to improve our EQ and our social intelligence. And that will go a long way. Hope you enjoyed that video, and talk to you guys soon.